Hello, hello, and welcome to For Book's Sake. I am Heather Roberts.
I am Veronica Adams, and we are 1852 Media.
All right, I wanted to try a little new intro. It is the new year, and we're just trying new things this year. And I
Yes,
like that. I
for
like that.
sure. Yeah.
Um, Today, we are in the episode of It Ends with Lawsuits. And
Doesn't it always?
doesn't it
Somehow, some
always?
way, the asshole lawyers have to get involved.
Yeah, over the holidays, there was a bevy of lawsuits filed
Yeah,
regarding the movie It Ends With Us. The book itself was by Colleen Hoover.
or
The
Colleen.
movie
Yeah.
had a number of A-list actors in it.
Yep.
Was created and produced by Justin Baldoni. Am I pronouncing his name right? Baldoni
Baldoni,
and
Baldini, Bal,
Baldoni, I believe it is.
Bellend, as the
Regardless,
British would say.
there's a lot. There's a lot. There are
Yeah.
layers to this, layers upon layers.
hmm
And the first instance when it dropped was, I believe it was December 20th, somewhere
Sounds right.
around then. And Blake Lively's lawsuit was
Yes.
leaked. So,
Leaks.
yeah. And so what a lot of people were a lot of people were confused about, it wasn't technically a lawsuit yet, like,
She'd filed a civil rights complaint in California.
yes.
And then
And
escalated that to a federal lawsuit to be filed in the Southern District of New York, I believe.
yes, and she just filed that
Mhm.
actual lawsuit, I believe, on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But that's because she was waiting. So, for those who don't know, who aren't lawyers, and this is just also, let's give our little disclaimer at the beginning. Veronica and I are both attorneys.
Yes,
We are both licensed. We are not your lawyer.
that's
This
right.
is not legal advice, and
We
this
are
is for
speculating and opining. We are not
yes,
providing advice to anyone in particular, least of
this is
all
for
you.
entertainment purposes only,
That's right.
and these are our opinions only.
Yes.
So yeah, what was I saying? So on the it
The New Year's Eve filing and why the lawsuit would have been leaked about 10 days before it actually was
right, yeah.
became a
So
real open case in federal court.
for those who don't know, the certain causes of action
Mhm.
require that you file through a government agency first,
Yeah.
okay? You have to wait and get what's called a right to sue
Yes.
letter. And that's essentially giving the government agency an opportunity to take up that cause on your behalf with
That's right.
you.
Yes.
And you
We're
have
talking
to
about
go
civil rights or any other federal rights that you have. The government wants the right of first refusal to prosecute the case.
correct. So you have to, it's required. If you go
Yes.
to court first and you don't have that right to sue letter, they're going to turn around and say this isn't right.
Yes. A judge is either going to put your case on hold or dismiss it without prejudice and force you to refile later. You're going to go through some procedural headaches and probably piss off court staff, a judge, and several bureaucrats at whatever government department gets to issue you your right to sue letter.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So it's just not a good look. That's bad lawyering.
It really
Um,
is. Yes.
that's that's not the
A
procedure.
nod to inexperience, someone who doesn't
Yes.
necessarily know what they're doing or what the procedural requirements are. Yes.
So that was required. So she had to go and file this with the government agency, wait the requisite time to get the
Yes.
right to sue letter, which frankly I think she got fairly quickly, being as how she was able to file on the
Well,
31st.
I mean, sometimes you do things at the end of the year when people are kind of only half working and there's not a whole lot of work in front of you. You get what you
That's
need
true.
quickly.
That's true. So the actual lawsuit that was filed is a replica of what was leaked on the 20th. So
And it is a shit show.
it is a massive shit show. But I just feel like that's important to note because a lot of people are like, well, she didn't actually file a lawsuit, or they thought
Nope,
she did
she
file
did.
a lawsuit. No,
Yep.
she did. She just had to file procedure first.
Yes.
Whereas there are two other lawsuits
Yeah.
filed in two different other jurisdictions
Yes. Yes.
that did not have causes of action or do not have causes of action that require that same procedure. So they were able to
Right.
just file at will.
Right.
Okay.
including me sued against the New York Times for their coverage of the leaked suit before it was filed. So,
Right. Which, of course, it was
really
leaked. I mean, of course it was
leaked. Let's
leaked.
use air quotes, okay?
Yeah.
Everything that has happened since this movie actually released has been, and even leading up to the movie's release in the late spring and early summer of last year, is it's been smoke and mirrors and PR and
It's
a
been very,
campaign in one form or another.
yeah. Yeah. It's very hard to know what to believe here.
Right.
I'm going into this very open minded because, and not trusting really anything I'm reading,
Hmm.
because number one, whenever you're writing a complaint, you are writing it in
Ah,
the,
yes, the arts and crafts of lawyering. How much
yeah,
bullshit can I stuff in here before I get sanctions?
yeah, you're writing it with the facts in the light most favorable to your client.
That's right. Always.
Always. So
Always.
you are taking the whatever set of facts you have.
Mhm.
Here we have a group of text messages, which I'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah.
But you have
Well,
these,
and a meeting agenda. I mean, the meeting agenda
yeah,
is pretty damning too, if you ask me.
I
But
agree.
yes, yeah, the text messages, the meeting agenda.
You have all of these things. You have these pieces of evidence that you
Uh-huh.
have. Then you also have what your client's telling you,
Yes,
right?
of course.
You're lining it up with other things that you can use to
Mhm.
corroborate,
That's
right?
right.
And you're taking those facts and you're putting them in a complaint in a persuasive way
Yep.
that in the light most favorable to your client. And
Always.
in a complaint, you can say fucking anything,
Pretty much.
anything.
And you can
So,
attach affidavits and other evidence to back it up. I mean, that's just the way it
yeah,
works.
that's the way it
You
works.
can attach screenshots of text messages that you've obtained through pre-suit discovery and
Which is
subpoenas,
not like a thing. That's like a,
with or without the emojis, as the case may be.
so yeah, I mean, the complaints are meant to be shock and awe. That's
Yes.
literally the point.
As are motions to dismiss, answers, and affirmative defenses, any of the general early pleadings, they are going to contain about as much of the salaciousness as you'll ever see in the lawsuit, other than maybe in the dirty details that come out through discovery.
Yeah, Discovery is the only other place that you're going to get the
Yeah.
juicy stuff. But usually in Discovery, that's when the facts, the truth, actually starts getting a little
Yes.
lighter. You start actually finding out the nuance of things, and
Right. How
um,
much evidence does the other side have to corroborate their version of events? How much evidence do you have to support your claims, etc.?
so
Yeah.
from what I can gather, because I've read there, so like I said, there are 3 lawsuits here. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So we have the lawsuit from, oops, did I put these back in order? No, I did not. Okay, so we have,
Blake sues Wayfarer, the production company, Baldoni.
she sued, okay, so
The other producer,
Wayfarer,
what's his name? Jamie. What's Jamie's last
Jamie
name?
Heath,
Thank you, Heath.
Steve Sarowitz
Oh,
is the
that's awful.
financier.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right. He's the money guy.
he's the money guy. It Ends
Yep.
With Us Movie LLC is owned by Wayfarer. They
Yeah.
are the only ones that own it, per my understanding. And then we get into the PR people, and that is that is a level and onion to this story that might require its own episode, but
I
we'll
mean
see
that
what we
that
can do today.
leads to the third lawsuit, arguably the PR, just the bullshit happening between and amongst the PR folks
Oh yeah. So
gives rise to its own lawsuit.
Melissa Nathan
Yes.
owns the agency group PRs, and
Yes.
TAG is what they
Yeah,
keep
that's
referring
yeah,
to,
the
the agency
acronym they
group.
use in the pleadings. It's tag.
And then Jennifer Abel,
Mhm.
who at the time in which she was got into contact with Baldoni and Wayfarer, worked for Jones Works LLC, and that's a
Yes.
PR firm.
A company owned by a woman named Stephanie Jones.
Yes. She then left or was fired from Jones Works.
6 of one, half a dozen of the
Yeah.
other.
And went and started working for Baldoni and Wayfarer on her own with
Yes.
her own company. I think it's called RWA Communications. Okay.
Excellent.
So that's where we're at with the parties with Blake's lawsuit. Blake is then suing all of these people. Oh, I should note Wayfarer is owned by Justin Baldoni.
Yes.
Um, and
And Jamie, I
And
believe.
Jamie. And yeah. So yeah, there's pretty much the two of them are running it. Blake's lawsuit makes it seem like Justin and Jamie are like bros who just one day woke up and decided to create a movie and like
They're not
create
just any bros though, Heather. They are
yeah,
formerly porn addicted bros
porn addicted bros.
who
Yes.
apparently care more about being inappropriate and having like open sexual dialogue and banter and just endless grossness on the set of their movies.
Right.
In addition to being two guys who just woke up one day and were like, yeah, let's start a film production company.
Exactly. Like the way that she writes this, I don't know. And like I said, this is the complaint. So
Yeah,
we don't know what's true. We don't know what's not
right.
true. But the way that the complaint is written is basically that this production company does not really have, they don't have an HR department. They don't really have like,
Well, I mean, if you're going to sexually assault and harass your employees, why would you bother with HR?
right. But yeah, they don't really have a lot of infrastructure. So it
Yeah.
would seem, they obviously have attorneys because they had to get involved at one point or
Yeah.
another. I don't know how many people work for Wayfarer, but the way that Blake's attorneys, obviously, but the
Yeah.
way in which Blake has, put in the complaint makes it seem like it's this sort of like fly by night,
Yeah.
newer production company that isn't very established, is has somehow hooked up with Sony for distribution purposes. But Sony's not running the show, Wayfarer is running the show,
Yeah.
and Wayfarer doesn't have the experience, it would seem, in creating movies, in knowing what is industry standard, what is not industry standard, and thus Blake's expectations of what this movie would be fell they were way
Yeah,
like
they were not met in any
they were
way,
not
shape, or form. Wayfarer is, um, I guess, tantamount to a startup in terms of like production, right?
that's right. That's how you would use
So
that.
they just have not yet gotten to the place where, or have completely failed to institute all of these different things that would lead them to provide a much more professional and even SAG a sanctioned or approved experience for talent and the people who work for talent.
So yeah, it just sounds like very startup-y is
Yeah,
how it reads,
right.
okay, from her complaint. And you get
Which is a
that
nice
so
way to say these guys don't know fuck all about making movies.
right. So I mean, yeah, it's a nice way of saying that. So and she has a bunch of complaints. So what had happened was my
Mhm.
summary. They started filming, okay, and then partway into the filming, there were the striking happened.
Yes.
There, for those that don't
Yes.
remember, there was an actor's strike, there was the writer's strike, there was all of that going on with SAG-AFTRA. So everything stopped, everything ceased. And then when they came back to filming, Blake had some requirements that we can get into of what had to take place and agreements that had to take place before she would return to
Right.
filming.
Right.
All of the allegations, at least from what I can gather, all of the actual sexual harassment allegations and all of that occurred in this first segment of filming,
Prior to
not
the strike.
in right prior to the strike, and nothing happened
Yeah.
after that.
Well, and I think it's important to note that the post strike, once the strike was resolved and filming could resume, the production at that point was very brief. It was only
Yeah,
like
it was like a
5 weeks
month.
of
Yeah,
filming or something, like January
correct,
into early February of 2024, and then they wrapped and it was done.
correct.
They were ready to go into post filming production and get ready for release.
Yeah, and there are plenty of allegations about shit that happened after that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
not
yeah,
about
yeah.
actual stuff that has to
Yeah,
do with
the I mean, the press junket and all of that stuff that
right,
happens later is a shitstorm of a different color. This
right,
is just about, the hostile work environment that existed
correct.
prior to the strike.
And so Blake is basically saying that there's just, I- th- something had to have happened. Okay,
Oh my
there
God,
was not
right?
a positive work environment. Blake and Justin didn't get along. Okay,
Oil and water, yeah.
that's just period. Because reading Blake's complaint, it is very obvious that she did not enjoy her time working on that set. Okay, reading Blake's complaint to the New York Times, mind you, not against Blake. I'm sure, though, that a lot of these things that we're reading in the New York Times lawsuit is going to, you know, come out in the answer or in
Yeah.
subsequent pleadings
Yeah.
in this one. But anyway, reading that one makes it seem like Blake was, a diva and
Mhm.
was taking over the film, and
Yes. She was
everything that
problematic.
Blake talks about, it happened, but it didn't happen like that.
That it's that tired trope of she's too sensitive, she's a bitch, she's impossible to satisfy, she can't take a joke, she's a
Correct.
stick in the mud. She and her husband think they have more power and influence in Hollywood than they do. The tired trope of the woman who dares to speak up becomes
Yes.
the person who gets cast in the worst light possible.
Basically.
Yeah.
Basically. That's Blake. That's Justin's
Yes.
reply.
Yes.
Like, we didn't mean it like that. She invited us into her, okay. Well, so one of the allegations is that he
So
walked
many layers to this.
so many layers. There's so much. And like, we're trying to knock this into something digestible for you, but we may have to do
Yeah.
this in multiple parts.
Uh-huh.
So we'll get to what are the salacious allegations? Because I know that's what you're waiting for, right?
Yeah, right.
So there's some of the salacious allegations are that Justin would call her sexy at inappropriate times, that he would not be there was like one scene where there wasn't any dialogue and there wasn't any noise, and so like there was
Mhm.
no reason to speak. It was going to be like a montage in the film, and they were dancing, and that Blake alleges that Justin like ran his like nose up her neck and was like, "You smell so good." Yeah. So shit like that. Talking about the sexual relationship
Yeah.
that each party has with their actual spouse.
Yes. Yeah.
Sharing
Asking
sexual.
invasive questions about sexual preferences and pornography use and some attempts to describe genitalia, making crude commentary about people's bodies.
When Blake was in one scene, she's giving, as her character is giving
Uh-huh.
birth, and she has on is this small little like privacy patch over her vagina,
Yeah.
and she has her feet up in stirrups, and they didn't close down the set. They had people walking around. They had
Yeah.
the financier Steve was there, for some reason. They didn't shut off the cameras for outside people to be able to like pull it
Yeah.
up and watch it. Like,
Mhm.
so that goes to what I was saying earlier about how it being like just a
Completely
completely
unprofessional set.
unprofessional set. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Well, and
Anyway, so
and my understanding is that in films where there is any form of intimacy depicted, there is always someone responsible for coordinating those interactions between the actors
yes,
and making sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable and has what they need in terms of makeup, prosthetics, protection, etc., right? And there were things happening related to sexual contact between the characters in the film without an intimacy coordinator present, comments being made at last minute additions to and or changes to what everyone had agreed to was going to be filmed,
I
things
don't
that
know. Just as an aside,
uh-huh.
okay, you and I work in the romance world, right? We
Sure.
know this book. We've known
Yeah.
this book, whatever. It's not. It's sort of a romance. It's romance adjacent. They're romantic, just because of the topic of it, right?
Oh,
And how it
yes.
ends, right?
Yes.
So it's technically doesn't have a happily ever after in this book. But anyway, it's part of a series. Anyway, my point being, um, they read the script.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
They knew the content
Yes.
of this particular story. Okay. Why would you not request or have an intimacy coordinator at the outset?
Mm.
That seems very standard to me.
I I personally think the answer is to that question becomes very apparent once we get to the press tour.
Well, yes.
And the post-release issues in this lawsuit and the other lawsuit.
But it's just, yeah, it just seems like with the content,
Mhm. Yeah,
you
of
know,
course, of course.
of the salacious content. I mean, it is about, for those that don't know, I don't know how you wouldn't if you're already watching this, you're
It's about
probably interested.
domestic violence.
It's about domestic violence, but it portrays it in a very realistic way, and so much that there is a loving relationship at one point between the two main characters, and
Yes.
they are deeply in love, and then it, devolves into something that doesn't look loving, but then it is loving, but then it isn't loving. And it shows a realistic view of
Mhm.
what domestic violence looks like, because that's oftentimes why it's very hard for women to leave the
Yeah,
situation, because it's not like, it's just a nightmare 24/7. There
right.
are often moments of joy and love and
Mhm.
wonderful, wonderful moments.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
and I do believe Colleen's on record as saying that it was the story itself is inspired by a relationship that she herself witnessed growing up.
correct. So yeah, it's a very realistic look at that type of a
Yeah,
relationship,
right.
which is a very sensitive thing to be filming and
Mhm.
acting out and portraying. And you should have the sense to know that you should have an intimacy coordinator.
Not if you're a porn addict.
Right. So that
I mean,
anyway,
no shade to folks with addiction, no shade to folks who are in recovery, but like, you're gonna let somebody who put the fox in charge of the hen house, so to speak. You're gonna make a movie about intimate relationships and domestic violence, and the guy who's in the two guys who are in charge of it allegedly have porn addictions. Like,
right.
what?
I mean, and listen, the veracity of that
I
allegation
know, I
is,
know,
you know,
I know. It's dubious, but like, it's out there.
it is, which is wild. So there are some claims. This is why, like, I get so frustrated with complaints sometimes, because
Yeah,
I'm like, that one's terrible. Like, but then there are other claims that seem to hold water. So it's like, what do
right.
you believe, right?
Everything is alleged until a judge or a jury makes a decision.
That's
I mean,
right.
that's what it comes down to.
So on January 4th, they have a meeting,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
As part of Blake has made complaints to the fictitious HR department.
Yes.
Um, and
Yeah. She is
really
she
to,
is seeking help from Wayfarer. Not that, I mean, two of Wayfarer's top executives are her biggest issue here,
right.
allegedly. But she's seeking assistance from Wayfarer and from Sony,
Yeah. And
among other parties.
she's had her attorneys work out
Uh-huh.
some things.
Yeah.
And part of that was, her coming back to work was this list of like 30 things that they
Yeah. It's
agreed
pretty
to.
long.
Yeah. And as the 30th thing is an in-person meeting before production resumes with Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, Miss Sachs, the Sony representative, the new
Yes.
producer, Blake Lively, and Blake
Yes.
Lively's spouse, Ryan Reynolds, to confirm and approve a plan for implementation of the above, all of these 29 other things that will be adhered to for the physical and emotional safety of Blake Lively, her employees,
Mhm.
and all the cast and crew moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. So that meeting happened on January 4th.
Yes.
And as a result of that meeting, there were 17 points that everybody agreed to,
Mhm.
um, per my understanding. And those were essentially what they had talked about before in the prior thing. Like,
Right.
there wouldn't be any more touching or sexual comments by Mr. Baldoni or Mr.
We're
Heath.
all gonna be grown-ups and act appropriately toward each other.
Essentially, that there would be no retaliation against Blake. for bringing these things up. Um, yeah, so just things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have this 5-week production then, and it seems like
Yeah.
everything's fine during that 5 weeks.
Right.
Then they go off to we're now in post production, and that's when things take another turn. Okay.
Well, so the issue in post production, the issue in pre release press, and then post release press becomes uh, an issue of everybody following the agreed upon marketing narrative.
Right.
Are we all on the same message here? And if we're not, why aren't we?
And that to me is a very good question,
Hmm.
because Blake's lawsuit is very clear that there was a pre-agreed upon marketing plan
Yes.
created by Wayfarer,
Yes.
that she did not create this
Uh-huh.
plan. Okay. Whereas Justin's lawsuit makes it sound like Blake took over the entire movie, the marketing plan,
Throw,
the
throw the
wardrobe,
woman under throw the woman under the bus.
yeah, the wardrobe, everything, the script
Uh,
at times, and had
yeah.
her husband write pieces of the script, which frankly, I mean, Ryan Reynolds is, you know, a movie genius when it comes to
They
certain
could
script
never make
lines.
me hate you, Deadpool.
I know they really couldn't. Um, and like, here's the thing:
Oh,
it's Ryan Reynolds, okay, and Blake Lively. They are like Hollywood royalty here,
for sure.
and so that comes with
She's mother's best friend. Come on now.
right. That comes with a level. They're A-list actors, okay,
Yes.
and Justin Baldoni with his startup production has gotten this A-list actor and is now
Yes.
sort of like pissed that he has to
Yes.
listen to them.
Well, and their empire, their empire, uh, stretches out well beyond Hollywood too. I mean, Ryan is invested in and financially very wealthy via sports and other business interests, including alcohol
Oh
and some
yeah,
other things I'm not fully aware of.
a cell phone
Um,
thing.
oh, that's right. That's it. That's it. It's the mobile phone
Mhm.
company, right? Yeah. So like he's just kind of a he's a business savvy dude, right?
Yeah,
He's got his hands in multiple pots, and I believe net worth starts with a B, not an M. So
I haven't looked recently, but yeah, he's certainly doing fine.
yeah, no, your
Um,
point's well made. These are very powerful, wealthy people who have a lot of influence.
And so, right. So her demands, she's coming into the set expecting an A-list set, and it's
Mhm.
not apparently an A-list set to her specifications.
Yeah.
She's bringing things up. Justin and Jamie are like not liking that she's sort of pushing back, it would appear,
Yeah.
and creates this sort of, relationship. They're thinking the way that it reads, okay, they're thinking they're having this lovely conversation about whatever, and they're just being themselves and, showing videos of, oh, we have a birth scene coming up. Let me show you a video of my wife giving birth.
Which is so
Like, whereas Blake's looking at that being like, why the fuck are you showing me a video of your wife giving birth?
yeah.
Whereas Jamie Heath is like, this is just beautiful moment that you need to watch. Like, we're not friends like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what Blake's saying. We're
Yes.
not like that. Well, this is supposed to be a professional environment,
Yes.
whereas they're making it seem very casual.
Right. So we have sort of this I don't know, you want to distill it down to movies? So they're looking at her like she's fucking Regina George, right? We got a mean girl on the set. She thinks that she's all that and a bag of chips, to quote the vernacular from 30 years ago, because that's all I'm good for anymore is completely irrelevant pop culture references. Um, and she feels like she's having to work at the Delta Tau Kai house from Animal House,
Yeah.
right? Like she is working with these disgusting, oversexed idiots, and they're working with the meanest girl in Hollywood. And
That's the environment that we're
it's
at.
been super explosive. Yeah.
So they did not get along pretty much, it seems, from the start.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are the allegations having to do with the sexual harassment allegations and all of
Right.
that. Then we move into post production and we move into a different era of Crazy Town.
Yes.
So Wayfarer, as I mentioned earlier, and Justin are represented by Jennifer Abel. Okay.
Yes.
Who at the time was working for Jones Works LLC. There's Jones Works that is owned by Stephanie Jones.
That's right.
And she, it would appear, started working with Wayfarer and Baldoni at the, and then sort of like assigned Jennifer to the account and then eventually sort of like let Jennifer take the lead. Right.
Yes.
And that's what you do as a business owner. Oftentimes you have other people who are, doing work on your behalf, right, for your
Sure.
company,
Of
and
course.
you don't know everything that's happening. Okay. Stephanie does not like, there's a third party here. Her name is Melissa Nathan. And Melissa apparently interviewed or had conversations with Stephanie over at Jones Works where she was actually going to come on board for a time. And until Stephanie, according to Stephanie, I'll just note this isn't Stephanie's lawsuit
Yeah, which
because
let's just tee
Stephanie
that up. Stephanie has also filed her own lawsuit here.
Stephanie has filed her own lawsuit
And
against
everybody scratches their head and goes, "Who the hell is Stephanie?"
right against Jennifer Abel, the publicist, Melissa Nathan,
Her one-time employee, Jennifer, and then Melissa. Yes.
Justin Baldoni,
Of
and
course. Of course.
Wayfarer Studios, her former clients.
That's right.
So the situation that and how this all intertwines is that, so in this lawsuit, she says that she was going to hire Melissa
Mhm.
until she found out a situation in which she felt that Melissa went way over the line with.
Yes.
And she was not comfortable with that. She ended up hiring two people at Melissa, like who Melissa recommended, but eventually they couldn't come to an agreement and she didn't want to do that she didn't hire Melissa. And she also said that she like never wanted to work with Melissa again.
Mm.
And I don't know how much of an edict she shared that with her, other people in her company.
Right.
Because as we know, Jennifer then works with Melissa again.
Yes.
And listen, in this business, you don't often get a choice. If your client wants to work with someone and you don't like them, if you want to keep them as your client, you often have to work with that other person. That's just how it is.
Yes.
It happens from
Well,
time
and
to
people have their own areas of expertise and specialty too, right?
time.
Like you can be in the same industry and hold the exact same title and do the same general basic thing, but be particularly focused on a certain aspect of providing that service or those contacts or
Right.
that, whatever the end goal is of your task list. Um and I think that is the situation here is that everybody had their own particular specialties, and it was a team effort with multiple agencies
Correct.
doing PR work for individual people and for the film itself.
So yeah, so the agreement with Jones Works was
Mhm.
Jones Works represented Wayfarer for $20,000 a month. Okay. And then they added Justin Baldoni on as like an add-on to that
Mhm.
contract for an additional $5,000 a month.
That seems pretty
So
cheap.
it does. But they were long-term clients and Wayfarer was like she represented Justin previously.
Yeah, they had
And
a
then
pre-existing relationship.
Wayfarer came up. So I feel like there was probably some discounting happening
Sure.
there.
Repeat business. You
Repeat,
treat a returning client a little better than you might someone brand new or someone who's known to you to be a huge pain in the ass.
right. And she's not going to charge them both, for 25,000 per. So she's doing like an add-on with like
Yeah.
Justin for 5,000. So it ended up
Right.
being $25,000. They had a 1-year contract that renewed automatically unless either party gave notice 90 days prior to the end
This
of the
all sounds so
contract.
standard. Yeah.
Very standard. There's also other standard things like there was a 30% commission if Jones Works booked any in-person speaking engagements, and 10% for any third-party other work that they may get for Wayfarer Baldoni. So that very standard, nothing insane.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying like clockwork. All is well. Jennifer Abel's assigned to the case, account, whatever.
Right.
And
Right.
it's just regular communications work. It's like she's acting as their publicist. She's working with the media. She's helping them coordinate stories about, the movies coming out, helping to coordinate a campaign for that.
Mm-hmm.
And just generally speaking, as their representative. If media questions come in, they'll funnel them to them, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
That's how that works. It's the buffer. And then there's these sexual assault allegations, sexual harassment. I'm sorry, not assault, sexual harassment allegations.
Yes.
That pop up, and they realize, oh, we might want to have a crisis team in place for in case she goes public with this.
You think?
Yeah.
You think?
So Jennifer Abel brings, or I don't know who brings her in, Melissa Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Jennifer Abel brought her in.
Yeah, she is known as the crisis fixer. Like, that's either her title or her reputation. She is the crisis fixer.
Yes, that seems to be her reputation. Mm-hmm. And she recently started her own agency as well. I think if my memory serves, she was with another agency before this, and there's a whole thing with that. But I'll do a little more research and get into that later. But Melissa Nathan, regardless, she's brought in as the crisis manager. Okay, her fees are $175,000 for 3 to 4 months of work. That's like the whole shebang. Or I think it was like $30K for 3 months, like per month or something like that, for a smaller package.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're not talking about small money here.
Yeah.
Like, this is obviously expensive work. However, what do you get for that? She can't tell you over the phone because that would be too much, and I can't put that in writing, or else, I could get in a lot of trouble. That, I think, was one of the most damning text messages.
It's such a red flag.
A
red flag. Yeah.
That is not good for her at all.
I will do this very expensive work, but I cannot tell you specifically what it's going to be or what results you can expect.
Yeah. Not good for her.
Yeah.
Because here, I'll be very blatant and open about it. Just from what I was reading, they are making it seem like in the Baldoni New York Times lawsuit.
The libel suit, yeah.
Because I should note that the lawsuit against the New York Times is not just Baldoni versus.
No, it's like 10 other
It's
parties.
Wayfarer, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Steve Sarowitz, Melissa Nathan, the agency PR group, Jennifer Abel, her company RWA Communications, Jed Wallace, who I'll talk about in a moment, and Street Relations. That's his company.
Yeah.
So it's all the players that we're talking. We have sides here. Okay, we have all of those people, and then we have Blake Lively on the other side, and then Stephanie Jones and Jones Works. Also on Blake Lively's side, but not in the same lawsuit.
Right.
Okay. So that's what we're dealing with here. And they make it seem like, oh, well, we were just doing our job. Like, we have all, they picked and they cherry picked the text messages. The reason that they have the text messages at all is because obviously Jones Works gave them to Blake Lively's team. Okay.
Yes.
Obviously. They say that they got them via subpoena. I don't know how that happened because there was no lawsuit at the time. There's no such thing as a pre-lawsuit subpoena. Okay, that just does not exist. Does not exist. Yeah. The only thing that was ongoing, it would appear from reading everything, was an arbitration between Stephanie Jones Works and Jennifer Abel.
Mhm.
during their dissolution.
Yeah.
So what happened was Abel is working for Jonesworks. She decides, I guess, that she hates Stephanie and wants to create her own firm
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
literal
there's
direct violation of the contract that she has with Stephanie. So,
correct.
yeah, I don't that there's no getting around that. And she doesn't talk about that at all. So that's going to be interesting that
It's convenient.
it's convenient.
The light most favorable.
Yeah. So there's an employment agreement between
Mhm.
Jonesworks and Jennifer Abel, as of course there should be. Part of that is, you don't steal our clients, you don't take any proprietary information, you don't, all of these things.
Yes.
So what does Jennifer Abel do? She creates her own company, RWA, in July of 2024. Start sending documents from Jonesworks, documents, contracts, all of that sort of stuff to her own account, to her own email address, stealing proprietary information. She starts talking to clients of Jonesworks and employees of Jonesworks about getting people to come over with her
Yeah.
when she leaves. And then apparently some sort of tech, like the IT department, discovered this, brought it up to Stephanie, and Stephanie fired her in August of
Mhm.
2024. And they went through arbitration because Stephanie was obviously upset and she breached the contract.
Yeah.
And
Also wants a court order saying that Jennifer has to stop doing whatever it is she's doing for whatever the terms of their, if they have a non-compete or something, in addition to the taking of proprietary information, et cetera, et
which they
cetera.
did have it. There was a non-compete in there.
Yep.
Um, and part of their contract required arbitration, which is why they were in arbitration. When Jennifer left, she took her phone and she had it forensically audited and reviewed
Yeah.
and secured from the moment that happened. And that's where the majority of these text messages are coming from.
Yes.
So, how Blake Lively's team, unless they were gifted them, but they said they got them through subpoena. So I'm at a loss for what legal process they were in that
Mhm.
allowed that to occur.
Yeah.
But that will come out later. I'm just very curious. But that's where all of these text messages came from.
Right.
And what's not good for Jennifer Abel and Melissa Nathan is that there are multiple text messages between them, basically slamming Stephanie and talking about, like, I'm going out of Jonesworks with a bang and ha 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 ha. There's this kill story that's about to happen on Stephanie Jones that they literally planted with
Mhm.
Business Insider. You can't get around that one.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're getting around that one. I'll be interested to see that one. There's a website, Stephanie Jones Lies or some shit, and it's all a slam piece. When you look at Melissa Nathan and
It's
what
so hard. It's so hard to take some of this shit seriously.
I
Like,
know, I know. It's so juvenile, right? Like, it's just ridiculous. When you look at what Melissa says that she does in her own words, she talks about websites and Reddit threads
Mhm.
and placement of articles and things like that.
Right. Right.
So she's doing the same thing that she's alleged to have done to Blake Lively
Mhm.
to Stephanie Jones.
Yeah.
And she talks with Jennifer Abel about how they're going to make so much money
Right.
and la 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 la. Well, Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios are included in this Stephanie Jones lawsuit because they were clients of Jonesworks,
Yes.
and then their contract said that they wouldn't poach any of their
Right.
employees.
And they are now being alleged to have poached Jennifer or induced her in some way to violate her agreements with Jonesworks and to have financially and perhaps even in terms of intellectual property injured Joan's works in
And
irreparable ways.
they just stopped paying as well. Like
Mhm.
they said, "Oh, we're fired. You know, we're moving
No,
with
we're done.
we're
Yeah.
done. We're moving with Jennifer Abel." But the problem is the contract doesn't allow for that.
Yep.
And they still owe $25,000 a month until May of 2025, and they're not paying her $25,000 a month. So they've breached the contract there.
Yeah.
So they're going to have a whole thing about that
Yes.
in this lawsuit. So yeah, it is a lot to unpack
Yeah.
with
And
that.
we haven't even touched the press junket yet. Like the real meat of what happened on tour, which
Right.
for anybody who's as chronically online as I am was pretty obvious to see once it kicked off where things were headed. So
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, we
it was
could talk a little
nasty.
bit about it today if you want, or we can wait until next time, which,
Hmm.
I mean, that's up to you. But no, I think we dive into it. I mean, what happened on tour? We can at least start talking about it, and then we can
Okay.
see where we end
Cool.
up.
Cool.
So when they go out to the press tour
Yes.
and they have their marketing plan,
Yes. And
which has been criticized.
the entire point of the marketing plan is that we are not going to oversell or even adequately sell the domestic violence angle. We are
Yes.
going to lift up the female main character, Lilly, as a person of strength, and we are going to make this more of a uh, female empowerment narrative rather than a domestic violence narrative in terms of how we are presenting the story in interviews and podcasts and and public appearances, etc.
And Blake Lively and I shall note Justin Baldoni seem
Mhm.
both to be on board with this at the very beginning.
And initially, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
initially.
And then people start kind of questioning, like people who've read the book talk,
Book talk.
book talk. People start scratching their heads. They're like, "What? Did anybody making this movie read this book?"
Right. 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 Like it was a little odd. And so, but Blake is doing her part, and then Justin pivots.
Yes. Yes. And suddenly it looks like Blake's kind of tone deaf.
Right.
And she's out here upholding this idea that Lilly is strong and this is like, girls' night out kind of thing that you guys, you can go to the movie with your girlfriends and just enjoy um
Almost like it's a
embracing
fun
each
rom-com.
other in your feminine strength and like,
Yeah.
and suddenly Justin's the one talking about the domestic violence stuff and he's the only one talking about it.
Right. So when this all started coming out, it was very much like, what is happening here?
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Yeah.
from our perspective, we were just
Yeah.
like watching all of these controversy stories
Uh-huh.
drop, and something happened on set, and we don't know what, and
And
all
nobody in the cast and crew from follows him on Instagram. Like he's
right,
now like this lone wolf out here speaking about how important it is that we show and have representation for women who are in these situations and anyone really who suffers domestic violence because it
right.
can and does happen to men too.
Of course,
But like specifically from the narrative, like suddenly it looks like Blake is just kind of this vapid airhead who doesn't give two shits about what real women struggle with. And Justin is suddenly this big advocate for women who are in violent and abusive relationships.
right. It's wild.
It is. It's really odd.
And the tone switched, on social media. A lot
Yeah.
of people got really upset with Blake and
Uh-huh.
were really not in love with that. Like some
I
of her old,
specifically remember seeing clip after clip of
yeah,
like cringy interviews she did years ago, like
yeah,
10 years ago for movies uh, you know, most of us didn't even watch, and of her being kind of, I don't know, out of touch or condescending or,
yeah. There,
it was very interesting to see it start to happen in real time.
it was because I mean we watched it because we
Well,
were
we're chronically online because our work requires us to be.
yes, And because this was about a book that was very prominent in our
Yes.
industry,
Right in our wheelhouses.
right in our wheelhouse. So we saw this happening in real time.
Yep.
We saw our friends and readers commenting
Yes.
on this. And,
Yes.
we saw Blake Lively appear at Book Bonanza, which is Colleen Hoover's book event,
Yep.
to do the premiere of the movie. We had friends that were there who got to see the movie first. And, yeah. So we saw this happening in real time, and it was completely wild to see. And I was just thinking at the time, like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like there's something happening here.
For sure.
And Colleen had made some sort of a vague comment, like, you don't always know what's happening behind the scenes, or something like that.
It was very cryptic.
And so I was like, okay, all right. So something's going down.
All right. Mentally, let's put a pin in this one. All right. We're going to see more later. That's Colleen signaling that not all is the way we think it is from the outside looking in.
And her inviting Blake, having Blake at that premiere, signaled her support of Blake.
Yes.
And all of that. So it was very interesting to see. And then she has thus, after December 20th, come out and with a more, detailed,
a much more direct statement in support
of Blake. But yeah, so we're watching this in real time and wondering, what the heck's going on. And then we get this lawsuit that basically alleges that this entire thing was orchestrated.
Yep.
And the Jed guy that we had spoken of earlier was hired by Melissa Nathan.
Yes.
And he essentially has not a bot farm, but his company specializes in getting people to produce content that appears organic.
Yes.
And listen, we know these people in the book world. These people do exist. I have names that I could send you to if this is something that you want to do. But there are people in the book world who literally have like 200 phones. They hire people who have like 200 phones, and and all these accounts all over the place. They're manufactured accounts, but they appear organic. They're sort of bot farms, but and they will go on and post about things. And when you have like 200,000 posts from different accounts coming in around the same time, the algorithms appear, they will push that content up because they think that it's organically coming, that it's something that's organically popular.
Yeah.
And so it'll be shown to more people and will appear organic when it's not organic.
Right.
Okay, it's manufactured. And that is essentially, I got from the lawsuit, what this Jed guy does, street relations. Or at least part of what he does. So that's, Jed. I'm sorry. I was like, Jed. So that's where he comes into play. And that's what it was alleged, that he had some placements essentially with these grassroots social media that were creating this type of buzz.
Yeah.
And then it bursts up, and then, people that start spouting these opinions and all of that.
Yeah. Well, and maybe in the next episode, we can get into greater detail about why it is all of this began to happen, and what led to the decision to even pursue this strategy.
Oh, yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah. And it's just really, it's amusing to me that in the Baldoni lawsuit, okay, which one is this? Yeah. In the Baldoni lawsuit, in the second page, we're on like page 2, and it's, excuse me, or what is it's on like the first few pages. Page 3, I apologize.
Yeah.
It's basically saying it was Lively, not plaintiffs, who engaged in a calculated smear campaign. So their allegation is that she did it, and so therefore we had to protect ourselves, and that's what resulted from all of this. And
In a
we can,
domestic violence situation, this is called reactive abuse.
yeah, and it's just wild. The whole thing is wild. And there are truly so many layers. I think in the next episode that we talk about this, which will be in February. So for those of you, I
Look
know
at Heather setting the tone.
I'm setting the tone for the new year. We're trying something new for the new year.
Yes, we are.
We're going to do 2 episodes a month.
Mm-hmm.
One is going to be sort of a deep dive into legal issues like this, or stuff happening in the publishing and or adjacent
Book world
industry,
generally.
book world
Yeah.
industry. And then the other episode, we are going to be doing a guest interview and talking about our guests and also about other things that are happening in the world. So,
Yep. Super excited about that.
our next episode will be at the end of January, and that is going to be with Chasing Oz, also known as Danielle. She actually is a romance author herself, and she also has her own TikTok account, Instagram account, YouTube.
I would be shocked if you guys have not heard of her and or scrolled past her or listened to a
Yeah,
few of her videos on TikTok at least once.
exactly. She talks a lot about politics.
Yes.
She's lovely. She has hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers, and we are so pleased that she's willing to come on our
Yes.
podcast.
Super excited.
She has her own podcast, and she actually just did an interview with V from Under the Desk News.
Yep.
So love that for Danielle, and we are so excited to have her on the next episode of For Book's Sake. So that's my teaser there. So we will deep dive further into this in February.
Yes, and I'm sure we will have substantive legal updates by the time we circle back around to this.
Yeah, and that is also my hope, that if we push this out a little bit in different parts, that we'll actually have more information to talk about.
Exactly.
Because
we can get into the really dirty details of the press tour and then talk about what has happened since we last touched on it.
Right. So if you have questions that you want answered about this lawsuit from a legal perspective, please put them in the comments. Please email us and let us know. We're happy to get into it and answer some questions that you may have had. And we're excited to be doing this year. We're happy to be back, and we're excited to talk to you this year with For Book's Sake.
Yeah.
So until next time. This is Heather and Veronica.
Yeah.